Most people think wealth disappears because of one big mistake, a bad investment, a failed business, a sudden loss, something dramatic that you can point to and say, that's where it all went wrong. But in reality, that's almost never the case. Wealth doesn't usually vanish overnight. It erodes slowly, quietly, and consistently through habits that feel completely normal in the moment. It starts with lifestyle creep, and this is one of the most dangerous financial traps because it disguises itself as progress. You get a raise, and suddenly it feels reasonable to upgrade your lifestyle just a little. Maybe you move into a slightly nicer place. Maybe you start eating out more often. Maybe you justify a better phone, a better car, better everything. None of it feels excessive. In fact, it feels earned. You worked for this, so why not enjoy it? The problem is that every time your income increases, your expenses rise to match it. Instead of creating a gap between what you earn and what you spend, you close that gap entirely. You stay in the same financial position, just at a higher level. You're earning more, but you're not keeping more. And over time, this becomes your new normal. You don't even remember what your old expenses felt like because this new version of life quickly becomes your baseline. And once something becomes your baseline, it's incredibly hard to go backwards. That slightly nicer lifestyle turns into a necessity in your mind. Cutting back starts to feel like a loss, even though it was never necessary to begin with. So you keep pushing forward, telling yourself that the next raise will be the one where you finally start saving more. But when that raise comes, the cycle repeats again. At the same time, there are the small daily expenses that seem completely harmless on their own. A coffee here, a quick online purchase there, subscriptions that auto-renew every month without a second thought. Individually, none of these decisions feel like they matter. They're small enough to ignore, easy enough to justify. It's just a few dollars, it's convenient, it saves time, it makes life a little easier. But when you zoom out, those small expenses stack up in a way that's almost shocking. What feels like a few dollars here and there can easily turn into hundreds every month. And over the course of a year, that's thousands. Over a decade, it's tens of thousands. Not just the money itself, but the opportunity cost of what that money could have become if it had been invested instead. That's where the real damage happens. It's not just about the money you spend, it's about the growth you give up. Because money that isn't invested doesn't just sit still, it loses potential. It misses out on compounding, which is the single most powerful force in building wealth. And compounding doesn't work well when you start late. It rewards time more than anything else. Every small dollar you spend today isn't just a dollar gone. It's potentially $5, $10, or $20 in the future that you'll never see. And because the losses are spread out over time, you never feel the full impact in the moment. There's no immediate consequence, no warning sign, just a gradual drift away from where you could have been. Another layer to this is convenience spending. Modern life is built to make spending as easy and frictionless as possible. With a few taps on your phone, you can have food delivered, groceries brought to your door, products shipped instantly. And while each decision saves time or effort, it almost always costs more money. You're paying a premium for convenience, and when that becomes a habit, it turns into a constant drain on your finances. The more you rely on convenience, the more it becomes your default. Cooking at home feels like a chore compared to ordering in. Going to pick something up feels inconvenient compared to having it delivered. And slowly, you start outsourcing more and more parts of your life, not realizing how much it's costing you over time. Subscriptions are another silent drain. They're designed to be forgettable. A small monthly fee that feels insignificant enough to ignore, but when you have multiple subscriptions across entertainment, apps, services, and memberships, they add up quickly. And because they're automated, they continue whether you actively use them or not. It's money leaving your account without any conscious decision being made. Then there's the mindset behind all of this, which is perhaps the most dangerous part. The belief that small decisions don't matter, that you'll fix things later, that once you earn more, you'll start being more disciplined. This way of thinking delays responsibility and pushes financial awareness into the future. But the truth is, your habits don't magically change when your income increases. If anything, they scale with you. If you're careless with small amounts of money, you'll likely be careless with larger amounts too. The patterns you build early on tend to stick, and without realizing it, you carry them forward for years. And this is how wealth gets quietly destroyed. Not through one big decision, but through thousands of small ones that feel harmless in isolation. Each one chips away at your ability to build something meaningful. Each one pushes you slightly further off track. What makes it even more difficult is that there's no immediate feedback. You don't see a notification saying, this purchase just cost you $5,000 in future value. You don't feel the long-term impact right away. Everything feels manageable. Everything feels fine. But fine is exactly where the problem is, because fine doesn't build wealth. It maintains the status quo. It keeps you in the same cycle year after year without significant progress. Breaking out of this requires a shift in awareness. You have to start recognizing that every financial decision, no matter how small, contributes to a bigger picture. It's not about cutting out everything or never spending money. It's about being intentional. It's about understanding the trade-offs. Every dollar you spend is a choice between immediate satisfaction and future growth. And when you consistently choose immediate satisfaction, you slowly give up the chance to build long-term wealth. This doesn't mean you can't enjoy your money. It means you need to be conscious of how often you're trading your future for the present. Because when those trades happen daily, weekly, monthly, they define your financial trajectory. The reality is, most people aren't losing money in ways that are obvious or dramatic. They're losing it in ways that feel completely normal. And that's why it goes unnoticed for so long. The turning point doesn't come from earning more money, and it doesn't come from some sudden breakthrough where everything instantly changes. It comes from awareness, a moment where you stop operating on autopilot and start paying attention to what's actually happening with your money, because until you see it clearly, you can't fix it. Most people avoid looking too closely at their finances, not because they don't care, but because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to assume everything is under control than to confront the reality that it might not be. So instead of tracking every expense, they rely on rough estimates. They check their balance, see that there's still money left, and take that as confirmation that things are fine. But that's not clarity. That's guesswork. Real awareness starts when you track everything, every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. Not just the big expenses, but the small ones too. Especially the small ones, because those are the ones that slip through unnoticed. When you write it all down or see it categorized in front of you, it forces you to confront patterns you didn't realize existed. You start noticing how often you spend out of habit instead of intention. You see how much money goes toward things you barely remember buying. You realize that what felt like occasional spending is actually consistent and predictable. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That awareness alone begins to change your behavior. Not because you're forcing yourself to be disciplined, but because it becomes harder to justify unnecessary spending when you know exactly where your money is going. At the same time, controlling expenses becomes less about restriction and more about alignment. It's not about cutting everything out or living as cheaply as possible. It's about deciding what actually matters to you and eliminating what doesn't. Because when you don't make that decision consciously, your default spending habits will make it for you. Most people don't intentionally choose their lifestyle. They fall into it. They spend based on convenience, social influence, and impulse, rather than clear priorities. And that's how money gets allocated in ways that don't actually improve their life in a meaningful way. When you take control of your expenses, you're essentially taking control of your direction. You're deciding where your money goes instead of letting it disappear into things that don't add value. And often this doesn't require drastic changes. It's about small adjustments that compound over time. Cutting one unnecessary expense might not feel like much, but stacking multiple small changes creates a noticeable difference. And more importantly, it creates momentum. You start to feel in control, and that control reinforces better decisions. But awareness and expense control alone aren't enough. The real shift happens when you start investing early and consistently. Because saving money without investing is only half the equation. It protects your money, but it doesn't grow it in any meaningful way. Investing is what turns discipline into results. The problem is, most people delay this step. They tell themselves they need to learn more, earn more, or wait for the right time. They overthink it. They try to predict the perfect moment to start, and in doing so, they lose the one advantage they can never get back, which is time. Starting early matters more than starting perfectly, because investing isn't about timing the market, it's about time in the market. The longer your money is invested, the more it benefits from compounding. And compounding isn't something you notice right away. It's slow at the beginning, almost unnoticeable. But over time, it accelerates in a way that feels almost unfair. The first few years might not seem impressive. The growth feels small relative to the effort, but as time goes on, those early contributions start to build on each other. Returns generate more returns, and the process becomes self-reinforcing. This is why automation is so powerful. When you automate your investments, you remove the need for constant decision-making. You don't have to rely on motivation or willpower. The system works in the background, consistently moving money from spending into investing without giving you the chance to second-guess it. And that consistency is what makes the difference. Not occasional bursts of discipline, but steady, repeated action over time. At a deeper level, this shift requires changing how you see money. Instead of viewing it as something to spend, you start seeing it as a tool. Every dollar has potential beyond its immediate use. It can either be consumed today or invested to create more in the future. When you internalize this, your decisions start to change naturally. You don't have to force yourself to save or invest. It becomes a default way of thinking. You begin to weigh every purchase differently, not in terms of its price, but in terms of what it could become if you invested it instead. This doesn't mean you stop spending altogether. It means you become selective. You spend on things that genuinely matter to you, and you cut back on things that don't, because every unnecessary expense now feels like a trade-off you're consciously making. Over time, these changes create a completely different trajectory. Instead of money slipping through your fingers, it starts accumulating. Instead of feeling like you're always catching up, you begin to build momentum, and that momentum compounds just like your investments do. What once felt out of reach starts to feel possible, not because of one big change, but because of hundreds of small decisions that align with your long-term goals. And the most important part is that none of this requires perfection. You don't need to track every dollar flawlessly or make the perfect investment every time. You just need to be aware enough to catch your mistakes early and adjust. Because awareness gives you control. Control leads to better decisions. And better decisions repeated consistently lead to results that seem disproportionate to the effort. It's a gradual process, but it's also predictable. If you track your money, control your expenses, and invest consistently, the outcome becomes almost inevitable. Not overnight, but over time. And that's the real turning point. Not a sudden change, but a steady shift in how you think and act with money every single day.